The church was adorned with a grandeur that only money and meticulous planning could create. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft glow across the velvet aisles, the scent of fresh roses mingling with the faint notes of a string quartet rehearsing in the background. Guests whispered excitedly, their eyes glancing toward the bride who stood at the threshold, poised to walk down the aisle. But despite the perfection surrounding her, her mind was a tempest of anxiety, fear, and memories she had long tried to bury. Two men stood on either side of her future. One was the groom, a man who had promised stability, affection, and a life mapped with conventional security. His smile was charming, but a little too rehearsed, his eyes reflecting a calm certainty that made her doubt the authenticity of her own emotions. The other was a billionaire, a man whose presence in her life had been a whirlwind of secrets, passion, and revelations. He knew things about her, truths she had kept hidden from the world, secrets that weighed heavily on her conscience. As the bridal march began, every eye turned toward her, expecting a flawless procession. She lifted her gaze, walking slowly, feeling the weight of silk against her skin and the expectations pressing on every shoulder. But her thoughts were elsewhere. The man she loved, the one who knew her completely, was there, watching her with eyes that saw beyond the veil of propriety. Each step she took seemed to pull her deeper into a conflict she could no longer avoid. Whispers among the guests grew louder. People noticed the tension, the almost imperceptible hesitancy in her stride. Her heart raced, matching the rhythm of the music, each beat echoing the decision that loomed over her. The groom's eyes met hers with expectation, silently asking her to trust the path they had chosen together. And yet, the billionaire's gaze held a question, a plea, and an unspoken promise all at once. It was as if time had slowed, allowing her a few precious moments to confront the truth before committing herself to a life that might no longer feel real. She remembered the first time she had met him, the billionaire who had entered her life unexpectedly. He had been enigmatic, impossible to predict, yet entirely captivating. Every encounter since had been charged with emotion, each secret they shared cementing a bond that the world would never understand. And now, standing between two men, one offering familiarity and the other an irreplaceable depth of understanding, she faced a crossroads she had never anticipated. The priest began the ceremony, his voice steady, but even he seemed aware of the unusual electricity in the room. As vows were about to be exchanged, her hand trembled slightly, the bouquet she clutched feeling suddenly heavier than it should have. Guests leaned forward, curious and concerned. No one could predict the moment of reckoning that was about to unfold, one that would reveal hidden truths, challenge loyalties, and transform the course of every life in that church. The billionaire took a single step forward, his presence commanding attention without a word. The groom stiffened, sensing an intrusion, but unable to define it fully. Guests murmured, sensing the tension, but unaware of the hidden story that had brought the bride to this fragile moment. The bride felt her pulse spike, caught between expectation and desire, duty and authenticity. Every fiber of her being knew she could not proceed without revealing what had been concealed for so long. Her eyes met the billionaire's. In them, she saw the reflection of countless moments shared in secrecy, late-night conversations, confessions whispered into the night, and promises made without the world ever knowing. He had loved her in ways the groom could not, in ways that were deeply intertwined with her soul. Yet, she also knew that revealing this now could shatter everything around her, sending shockwaves through family, friends, and social circles alike. The priest paused mid-sentence, sensing the weight of the unspoken. "Is everything in order?" he asked cautiously, trying to maintain the semblance of ceremony, while the room teetered on the brink of chaos. The bride's lips parted, ready to speak, but hesitation gripped her. Could she risk it all? Could she defy expectation and speak the truth in a place where tradition demanded silence? She remembered the letters, the secret messages, and the moments of silent understanding that had bound her to the billionaire. Each memory surged forward with the force of inevitability, demanding acknowledgement. And as the groom reached for her hand, she realized the truth she had long denied. Her heart had already made its choice. Yet, saying it aloud would be the hardest step of all. The billionaire moved closer, not to intimidate, but to offer support, a silent reassurance that whatever she chose, she would not face it alone. His eyes conveyed 1,000 unspoken words: forgiveness, patience, love, and understanding. The bride's breath caught. She could feel the energy of the room shift, the collective attention of the guests sharpening, drawn into the unfolding drama. Finally, with trembling hands and a voice that carried through the sacred space, she began to reveal her secret. Every word she spoke pulled at the fabric of the ceremony, unraveling the illusion of normalcy, and laying bare the complex web of truth, passion, and past choices. The groom's face drained of color as comprehension dawned, the solidity he had relied upon now teetering like a candle flame in a sudden gust. The guests gasped, whispers multiplying, as the reality of the situation overtook any expectations they had brought to the day. And as she spoke, the billionaire reached out, gently taking her hand. The gesture was not a claim, but a reassurance that the love that had been hidden in the shadows was now recognized in the light of day. The bride realized that in this moment she had not just revealed her truth. She had embraced it, acknowledging that love is rarely simple, rarely convenient, but always transformative. The groom stood frozen at the altar, his hand still extended toward the bride, but his mind a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. He had imagined this day for months, meticulously planning every detail, believing that love was a guarantee he could claim with ceremony and vows. But now, as her voice echoed through the church, revealing truths he had never anticipated, the foundation of his expectations cracked beneath him. Around them, the guests murmured, exchanging glances filled with curiosity, concern, and intrigue. Some discreetly reached for their phones, unsure whether the spectacle unfolding was private or meant to be shared. In the center of it all, the bride's heart pounded relentlessly, each beat a declaration that she was no longer willing to live in half-truths. She had always been the picture of composure, but today, under the weight of her own honesty, she allowed herself the vulnerability she had long resisted. The billionaire, standing slightly to the side, exuded a calm authority that contrasted sharply with the groom's growing agitation. His gaze never left hers, conveying a depth of understanding that could not be captured in words. Every movement, every breath he took seemed to anchor her, reminding her that truth and love were inseparable, even when the consequences were uncertain. For a moment, the priest seemed unsure how to proceed. Tradition demanded that vows be exchanged, that the ceremony continue uninterrupted. Yet, the energy in the room defied convention. Guests leaned forward, sensing that this moment would define more than just a marriage. It would redefine loyalties, trust, and the boundaries of the heart. The air was thick with anticipation, charged with the unspoken question: what choice would she ultimately make? The bride took a deep breath, steadying herself against the tide of emotion. She spoke again, this time addressing the groom directly, her words gentle but firm. She explained the connection she had shared with the billionaire, the moments that had shaped her understanding of love, the secrets that had bound them, and the depth of feeling that had never wavered. Her voice, though trembling, carried clarity, and with each word, the groom's expression shifted from confusion to dawning realization. He wanted to respond, to assert the life they had planned together, but the words stuck in his throat. The certainty he had clung to was slipping, replaced by the recognition that love could not be dictated by ceremony alone. The guests held their collective breath as the scene unfolded, witnessing a collision of expectation and authenticity, a confrontation of heart versus obligation. As the bride continued, she recounted the first time she had truly understood her feelings for the billionaire. It had been a moment of quiet revelation, unremarkable to anyone else, yet transformative for her. She spoke of shared laughter, whispered confessions, and the kind of understanding that transcends explanation. Each detail drew a clearer picture of the invisible thread that connected them, and slowly, the groom began to comprehend the depth of what he had not realized before. By the time she finished, a heavy silence enveloped the church. The guests, previously restless, now waited in reverent anticipation. The groom's hands fell to his sides, his eyes searching hers not with accusation, but with a complex mixture of shock, grief, and reluctant acceptance. Meanwhile, the billionaire stepped closer, not to claim, but to silently offer support. Their hands brushed, a simple gesture that carried a world of meaning. The bride felt the tension begin to lift, replaced by an unexpected clarity. She had faced the impossible choice and emerged with her truth intact. The room itself seemed to exhale, the weight of suspense giving way to the reality that love, true love, cannot be suppressed. Just as the silence began to settle, the billionaire reached into his jacket pocket and retrieved a small, carefully folded envelope. He handed it to the priest, who raised an eyebrow in curiosity and caution. "This is from you?" the priest asked, his voice betraying both professional composure and personal intrigue. The billionaire nodded. "It's important. The bride's truth and her future. Everything you need to understand is in this letter," he said quietly. The priest hesitated, but ultimately opened it, scanning the contents with increasing surprise. Each line revealed hidden facts, long-concealed connections, and evidence of choices made in secrecy, but with good intentions. The envelope confirmed what the bride had already said and added a layer of clarity that made everyone in the church reconsider what they thought they knew. The bride's eyes never left the billionaire's. She could see his patience, his unwavering support, and the quiet strength that had been her anchor throughout. And as the priest's expression shifted from confusion to understanding, she realized that the world she had feared confronting was slowly accepting her reality. The groom, however, was less composed. He struggled with feelings of betrayal, confusion, and grief. He had loved her in his way, but love is not merely about expectation. It is about knowing, understanding, and accepting the truth. And the truth before him now was something he could not deny. The billionaire had always understood her in ways he never could, and the letters and secrets now validated what she had felt all along. The guests leaned forward, captivated by the unfolding drama. Some felt sympathy for the groom, others admired the courage of the bride, and a few simply absorbed the tension, unsure how it would resolve. The church, with its grandeur and meticulous order, had become a stage for a story far more complex than anyone had anticipated. Finally, the bride stepped forward, placing her hand gently on the envelope, acknowledging its significance. "This is everything," she said softly, her voice steady despite the storm of emotion. "It's my past, my truth, and the path I must follow. I cannot hide who I am, and I cannot continue pretending that my heart belongs somewhere it does not." The billionaire nodded, his presence steady, offering a silent vow of loyalty. He had not come to claim her forcibly or to disrupt for spectacle. He had come to honor the truth they shared, to ensure that love, in its most authentic form, was acknowledged. The groom finally spoke, his voice trembling with emotion. I had no idea. I thought this was enough." His words hung in the air, a confession of misunderstanding and an acknowledgement of the limitations of expectation versus reality. The bride shook her head gently, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Love cannot be controlled," she said. "It cannot be predicted or scheduled. It is found in truth, in understanding, in the courage to face what cannot be ignored." The priest lowered the letter. The ceremony paused but transformed. The church had become a crucible of honesty, and each person present understood that this moment would be remembered far beyond the confines of a single day. The billionaire extended his hand once more, not to take, but to offer support, a symbol of unwavering presence. In that instant, the bride realized that her journey was not about choosing between men. It was about embracing the life she had fought to live honestly, openly, and passionately. And as the guests watched, the weight of suspense finally gave way to the promise of a future shaped by truth, love, and the courage to face reality head-on. The tension in the church was palpable, a living thing that pulsed between the bride, the groom, and the billionaire. Every heartbeat seemed louder than the last, echoing off the marble floors and vaulted ceilings. Guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, whispering softly, unsure whether to intervene or simply witness the drama unraveling. No one dared to break the silence. The groom's eyes darted back and forth, attempting to read the emotions hidden behind the bride's calm exterior. He wanted to understand, to reclaim what he had believed was a shared destiny, but the clarity in her gaze was disarming. She stood with poise, yet her eyes betrayed the storm inside, a mixture of sorrow, resolve, and relief. She had made her decision, and it was irreversible. The billionaire, still standing slightly to the side, observed the groom silently. There was no arrogance in his demeanor, no smug satisfaction. Instead, he emanated quiet confidence, the kind that comes from knowing the truth and being prepared to honor it without forcing it. His presence alone made the air heavier, each step deliberate, each glance weighted with meaning. He had not come to claim or compete. He had come to ensure that honesty prevailed. Finally, unable to endure the silence, the groom spoke. I don't understand. All this time, I thought I knew you, but now everything is different. His voice cracked, a mixture of grief and incredulity, betraying the internal battle raging within him. He had loved her, or at least what he thought was love. But love built on assumptions is fragile, and reality had just shattered his perception. The bride's lips parted, but she did not speak immediately. She wanted him to hear the truth, not her regrets. "You thought you knew me," she said softly, each word deliberate. But love isn't about control or certainty. It's about understanding, acceptance, and courage. And courage means facing the truth, no matter how painful. Her voice carried through the hushed church, resonating with authority and authenticity. The guests leaned forward instinctively, drawn into the unfolding confrontation. Some glanced at one another, absorbing the intensity of the emotions on display. It was not merely a dispute between two men vying for a woman's affection. It was a revelation of the complexities of human connection, the fragility of assumptions, and the enduring power of honesty. The billionaire took a step closer, his gaze meeting the bride's. No words were necessary. His eyes communicated a depth of understanding that transcended spoken language. The bride felt a warmth, a reassurance that anchored her in a way nothing else could. The groom, noticing the silent exchange, realized that he could never bridge the same emotional depth. The realization hit him hard, leaving him trembling and uncertain. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "All this time, why keep it hidden?" The bride's expression softened, tinged with compassion. "I feared judgment. I feared losing everything I knew. But I also feared losing myself if I didn't speak the truth. You cannot love someone fully if you do not honor who they truly are." The billionaire nodded in agreement, a silent confirmation that her words were not mere sentiment. They were reality. The groom's shoulders slumped as he absorbed the weight of the truth. He had been competing with a reality he could not influence, a connection that had always existed beyond his reach. The bride stepped closer to him, not to comfort, but to acknowledge the shared history. "I will always care for you," she said, her voice steady. "But I cannot sacrifice the truth of my heart for comfort or convenience. You deserve someone whose love is unequivocal, and I cannot be that person for you." Tears welled in the groom's eyes, but he nodded, a mixture of grief and acceptance washing over him. The guests exhaled collectively, sensing that the confrontation had reached its emotional peak. The tension began to dissipate, replaced by a quiet recognition that life, love, and choice were far more complex than the surface appearances suggested. The bride turned toward the billionaire, her hand brushing against his. In that simple touch lay an unspoken understanding, acknowledgement of past struggles, of shared history, and of a future built on honesty. The guests sensed the shift immediately, leaning forward to witness the next chapter of the story. The church seemed to hold its breath as the bride and the billionaire moved closer to each other. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Every eye in the room focused on the unfolding drama. The groom, standing frozen, watched helplessly, realizing that he could no longer influence the trajectory of events. He had been present for every detail of her life, but he had never truly understood her heart. The bride looked around at the guests, recognizing the curiosity and tension in their eyes. She straightened her posture and raised her voice, ensuring that her next words were heard clearly. "Today is not just about a ceremony," she said. "It is about truth, understanding, and the courage to honor what we feel. I cannot proceed with lies, nor can I ignore the reality that my heart has long acknowledged." The billionaire stepped forward, matching her resolve with his own. "We have known each other's truths," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "We have shared moments no one else could understand. And while this is a public moment, it is also the culmination of honesty, patience, and trust. Nothing can replace that." A hush fell over the room. The guests felt the gravity of what was happening, a declaration of love. Yes, but also a profound acknowledgement of truth. They witnessed the interplay of human emotion, the collision of expectation with reality, and the courage required to confront the heart's deepest desires. The groom, still struggling with his emotions, finally found his voice. I understand," he said quietly. "It's just hard to accept." His words were sincere, tinged with the sadness of loss, but also the glimmer of respect for the bravery displayed. The bride nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Acceptance is never easy," she said softly, "but it is necessary for growth, healing, and the pursuit of genuine happiness. You will find someone who aligns with your heart completely, just as I have found someone who aligns with mine." The billionaire reached out and took her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. The gesture was simple, yet it conveyed volumes, the acknowledgement of shared history, the promise of future support, and the triumph of truth over pretense. Guests leaned forward, sensing the emotional culmination, while some discreetly dabbed tears, moved by the authenticity and depth of what they were witnessing. For the first time since the ceremony began, the bride felt a sense of calm. The tension that had gripped her chest eased, replaced by the profound certainty that she was making the right choice. She had confronted her fears, spoken her truth, and chosen the path that honored both her heart and her integrity. The groom, still standing alone at the altar, finally allowed himself to breathe. He had lost something he once thought indispensable, yet in doing so, he had gained clarity. Love, he realized, could not be forced or claimed. It could only be understood, respected, and nurtured. The church, which had been a stage for suspense, drama, and revelation, now held a quiet reverence. Guests remained seated, absorbing the lessons of courage, honesty, and the complexity of human emotion. They had witnessed more than a ceremony. They had witnessed a transformation, a moment where truth overcame pretense, and hearts were given the freedom to choose. The bride and the billionaire shared a final glance, a silent affirmation of what had passed and what was to come. The future was uncertain, as it always is, but it was theirs to shape together, founded on the honesty that had been hard-won and fully embraced. The church had fallen into a quiet, almost sacred, stillness. Every guest's eyes followed the bride as she stood near the billionaire, hand in hand, the weight of her past and the promise of her future colliding in that moment. The groom, still at the altar, struggled to reconcile the love he had believed in with the reality now before him. It was a heart-wrenching sight, one that showcased the stark difference between possession and genuine connection. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "This day was supposed to be about promises," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "But promises mean nothing if they're built on fear, secrets, or expectation rather than understanding." Her eyes scanned the room, resting momentarily on the faces of friends and family who had gathered in hope, curiosity, and support. She drew strength from their presence, from the collective humanity of the witnesses. The billionaire's gaze never left hers. There was no impatience, no desire to rush her decision, only patience, understanding, and unwavering support. He had waited quietly, knowing that the right moment to speak or act would be determined not by circumstance, but by truth. And that moment had arrived. The groom's hands trembled as he reached for the bride's shoulder. I thought we shared something that could never be broken," he said, voice heavy with anguish. "I thought love meant staying together through everything. But now I see perhaps love isn't about holding on. It's about letting go when it's necessary." The bride's expression softened, tears glistening in her eyes. Love is about understanding, yes. But it's also about honesty, courage, and listening to your heart. I cannot pretend, not now, not ever. To love someone truly is to honor their truth, even if it means walking away from comfort or convention. The billionaire gently squeezed her hand, silently affirming her choice, while the groom stepped back, overwhelmed by the emotional magnitude of the moment. Guests sat in tense anticipation, recognizing the drama that was unfolding not as a staged event, but as a raw, unfiltered revelation of human emotion. This was the kind of story that left no room for casual observation. One could only feel it, breathe it, and absorb its lessons. Finally, the bride lifted her gaze toward the congregation. "I choose truth. I choose honesty. I choose to follow my heart, not because it is easy, but because it is right." Her voice carried the weight of certainty and finality, echoing in the vast, reverent space of the church. The billionaire's eyes softened, and a faint smile broke across his face. "And I choose to honor that truth with you," he said. It was a simple statement, yet it resonated with clarity, commitment, and depth. The bride nodded, a mixture of relief and joy flooding her chest. In that instant, the tension dissolved, replaced by the serenity that comes when hearts align with integrity. The groom, standing alone at the altar, finally understood. Love was never about possession or timing. It was about connection, honesty, and the willingness to embrace what is true, even when it defies expectation. He lowered his gaze, silently acknowledging a reality he could not change, and allowed himself a private moment of grief, respect, and reflection. Guests whispered among themselves, some in awe, others in tears. They had witnessed the culmination of suspense, emotion, and truth, a story of hearts tested, bonds revealed, and courage affirmed. The bride and the billionaire shared a quiet glance, knowing the journey ahead would not be simple, but it would be real, honest, and theirs alone. The ceremony resumed, not with the artificial pomp of pretense, but with a genuine acknowledgement of love's complexity. The bride and billionaire approached the altar together, hand in hand, their steps slow and deliberate. Every footfall was a testament to their commitment to truth, a pledge to navigate the unknown with courage, and a declaration that love founded on honesty is invincible. The church doors opened to sunlight, spilling warm golden light across the aisle. Guests rose to their feet, the atmosphere shifting from tense anticipation to celebration and relief. The bride and billionaire stood side by side, their eyes meeting with a silent promise, a promise to honor not just each other, but the authenticity of their love. Tears ran down the bride's cheeks as she glanced around, seeing the expressions of joy, astonishment, and acceptance from those who had gathered. Friends and family understood that this was no ordinary wedding. It was a testament to courage, resilience, and the profound power of honesty. Each witness felt the weight of a story, the drama of the choices, and the authenticity of the emotions displayed. The billionaire reached for her hand, holding it firmly but gently. "This is just the beginning," he said softly, his voice carrying a warmth that soothed the lingering tension. "We've faced truth today. The rest is ours to create together." She smiled through her tears, the weight of fear, doubt, and uncertainty lifting with every heartbeat. "Together," she echoed, feeling the grounding assurance of his presence beside her. In that moment, she understood that love was never about shortcuts, illusions, or convenience. It was about patience, courage, and unwavering commitment to what the heart truly desires. The guests applauded as the couple walked down the aisle, their steps synchronized, their connection undeniable. The bride felt a profound sense of liberation, as if every secret, fear, and unspoken word had been lifted, leaving only the clarity of love and truth. Each step was a declaration of independence from past constraints, a celebration of emotional honesty, and a commitment to an authentic future. Outside, the sunlight bathed the church in warmth, and the world seemed to embrace their union with open arms. The billionaire whispered in her ear, sharing a private moment of joy and reassurance amidst the public celebration. "We've chosen reality over pretense," he said, "and that makes everything worthwhile." The bride nodded, feeling an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. "Yes," she said, "this is the life we were meant to build, not because it is easy, but because it is real." As the couple exited the church, the crowd erupted into applause, cheering not just for a wedding, but for a story of courage, authenticity, and the triumph of honesty over convention. Cameras flashed, but the most important images were those etched into memory. The faces, the emotions, the undeniable bond between two hearts that had chosen truth above all else. In the days and months that followed, the bride and billionaire navigated their new life together with patience, respect, and unwavering honesty. Challenges arose as they always do, but the foundation of their relationship was unshakable because it had been tested and affirmed in the most profound way, before the eyes of the world, in a moment that demanded courage, clarity, and authenticity. The groom, too, found his own path, learning to embrace the lessons of love, loss, and acceptance. He discovered that true happiness comes not from possession, but from understanding and honoring the choices of those we care about. In time, he found peace, witnessing the bride's happiness from a distance, and understanding that love, in its truest form, is never about control. It is about respect, honesty, and freedom. And so, the story concluded not with drama, but with resolution. The bride and billionaire stepped into a future defined by trust, courage, and shared authenticity. Their journey had been filled with suspense, revelation, and emotional intensity, but it had led to a place where love could thrive unencumbered. Every choice, every truth spoken, had paved the way for a life of fulfillment, connection, and enduring happiness. The final image lingered in the minds of the guests, the audience, and anyone who heard their story. Two hands intertwined, eyes meeting with unspoken understanding, and hearts aligned in the profound power of honesty and love.